to resign from office at the end of January. This after former staffers complaining about discussions the congressman had with them about surrogacy issues. Joining us now, Fox News contributors Tomi and Jessica Tarloff. Tomi, in the case of Franken, you had the pictures. You didn't just have the case of Leanne Tweeden, and you had creepy pictures with Ariana and Joy Behar, although they gave him a pass, in my opinion, just looking at the picture. What do you do in these cases when you don't know?
Well, here's what Franken did today. He pulled a Hillary Clinton. He did a sorry, but I'm not really sorry. I'm not really going to take responsibility. But let's be honest here. He is the sacrificial lamb of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party doesn't need him, so they threw him away, threw him under the bus, and they hope that this is going to somehow better their case, their moral high ground against Roy Moore. Not sure it's going to work. Yeah,
and also they're not losing the seat, Jessica. They have a Democrat who's the governor.
We certainly made the decision easier, absolutely. But I'd like to go to the question.
Made the decision easier, but there has been 30 years now, including up to and including all through last year, defending the predator Bill Clinton. That's a fact. That's their record. I don't believe this is principle. I believe this is politics and political expediency.
There's certainly politics and political expediency here. I do not think at all that the Clintons are relevant to this conversation. And
you know what? No, wait a minute. Jessica, with all due respect, what's relevant is they defended a guy who was accused of rape, groping, grabbing, fondling, touching, kissing against a woman's will. A guy that lied about Jennifer Flowers, and a team that evolved out of the Clintons that smeared these women for 30 years. You cannot tell us this is not relevant.
I can tell you because today the Clintons are history. Kirsten Gillibrand came out and
said
that
the people that defended all this are not history.
What do you want to do? You want to expel every Democrat over the age of 50?
No, I want honesty.
This country elected a man who has 16 allegations of sexual harassment.
Is that what it's all about?
Him.
It's all about Donald Trump.
No, it's not all.
So let me ask you a question. Do you believe?
Harvey Weinstein.
Do you believe? What do you think should happen in cases? I said I was consistent about John Conyers. I said he's denying it. It needs to be investigated. It's serious, but we got to get the facts and we got to get to the truth. Is that the right position to take?
I think that we do absolutely need to do that. But step number one is that we believe women. We have decided as a society that we take women's word and then we investigate and we move from there.
Jessica, I want to ask you, because you and I are both women. Do you really think that that's fair in every case to take a woman's story as gospel and not ask any questions? The Democrats not believe in due process? Because I can sit here as a woman and say, I don't think it's right that every woman is just believed. Her truth is just taken as the ultimate truth without an investigation. Think of how powerful that is. Trial by social media. Let's get over this.
I understand that completely.
It's so damning.
I wrote in a column for Fox News last week. I didn't think that Franken had to go, but I believe our first step has to be to take women seriously. There are stories coming out that have hit every single industry.
Al Franken,
of great abuses.
Wait a minute. I agree taking seriously, but how do you know? How do we know?
Well, I think that you look at things. I mean, in the Roy Moore case, you look at the notes that he's written.
Why haven't we done the forensics in that case?
I don't know about I think you can do the yearbook and those.
I gotta go.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Senator Al Franken's offering a not-so-funny farewell. The man who was accused of multiple gropings and other stuff will resign, but no apologies, no admission of guilt, just accusations, and lashing out, of course, against President Trump and Senate candidate Roy Moore. As predicted, Franken was a victim of the PC lynch mob. But now there's a backlash against the Ingram angle for identifying the real cause of his ousting. It was all a cynical political ploy. And a huge development at the Justice Department, a top official demoted after reportedly, as we thought, coordinating with the law firm peddling that infamous anti-Trump Russian dossier. But we begin with the fall of the liberal icon comedian Al Franken and the Me Too pandemic. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Look, Franken really had no choice after most of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate called on him to quit. But listen closely to his statement today.
Some of the allegations against me are simply not true. Others I remember very differently.
Think about about that for a moment. He's basically calling members of that Me Too movement liars. But he's unwilling to fight for his reputation. I happen to think this is a bad decision, and I pretty much don't agree with him on anything. And why did his fellow Democrats turn on him so fast and so furiously? As we explained in The Angle last night, the Dems did not suddenly become beacons of morality, wagging their fingers at everyone else because they're on the moral high ground. This was a crass political ploy. Democrats dumping Franken overboard because now that they can claim, hey, the moral high ground for 2018 and pursue allegations against Donald Trump and Roy Moore. There's no due process. If you're accused and you're a man, you're accused, you're done.
This is Venezuela, Cuba. This is every third world banana republic. Let's not have due process. Let's not ask anybody any questions. Let's not have any chance to have a hearing. Let's just lynch him. Because when we get done lynching him, we'll be so pure. We'll feel so good.
The new Puritanism in the Democratic Party, that's a switch. And you wouldn't believe the headlines we got in response. The Washington Post wrote, Al Franken finds unlikely defenders on Fox News. The Huffington Post, almost identical, meet Al Franken's Republican defenders. Mediaite, Laura Ingraham, Newt Gingrich defend Franken from Dem lynch mob. Newsflash, we weren't defending Franken. We were defending the notion that one should be considered innocent until proven guilty. You see, the real story here, what we were warning you about, is this. It's kind of a PC pogrom underway with a nasty political edge to it. They're dropping like flies now. Former Democratic Congressman Harold Ford Jr. He was fired today by Morgan Stanley for allegedly several years ago grabbing a woman. He was trying to take her out to drinks a couple of times, I guess. She didn't like that. And now he's vowing to sue the woman and Morgan Stanley in response, that it never happened. Congressman Trent Franks, this was a bizarro one, he announced today that he's going to step down rather than endure an investigation for having what he called a discussion of surrogacy with two previous female subordinates. And that takes the cake. Now, look, we need to be careful here. You, myself, everyone, that we don't get so caught up in the white heat of the movement, the Me Too movement, that lives and careers are destroyed without much evidence and in a flash. And look, there are credible allegations out there. There are creeps that need to be shown the door, no doubt about it. But we also have to be wary of what I call the Me Too flu. The gender opportunists who come out of the woodwork with allegations many, many years later because it serves a political or a personal end. Are any of you getting tired of the sudden explosion of moral piety spewing from those who ended up enabling the real abusers by looking the other way because it was political expedient to do so for years? Me too. And that's The Angle. Joining us now with reaction, attorney and GOP official Harmeet Dillon, along with Democrat Capri Cafaro, former minority leader in the Ohio State Senate. Harmeet, let's start with you. I mean, I'm not a fan of Al Franken. He and I have clashed a lot politically over the years, and I found him actually personally quite nasty. But I'm getting a little bit worried about where this is all going, because the Democrats clearly would not have acted against Al Franken if they had had the White House and they had had a decent majority in the Senate. This was so they could tar Trump and go after Roy Moore. I have no doubt in my mind.
Absolutely, Laura. I agree with your comments yesterday and Newt Gingrich's. I think that Al Franken is a human sacrifice on the altar of 2018 for the Democrats. And, you know, look at the leader of the pack, Kristen Gillibrand, who last year was campaigning happily with Bill Clinton, sends him thank you tweets, and thinks it's all hunky-dory. And then when it's expedient to throw the Clintons overboard, which they've done, now they've done that as well. And so I think this whole Me Too movement has been enabled by the fact that the Democrats are no longer held back by the Clinton dynasty, because for all these years, everybody knew it was wrong, what was happening, yet they couldn't say anything because the leaders of their party were the ones doing the offending and the demeaning and the shaming and the blaming and all those bad things. And so now it's a new day, but I think they're going a little bit overboard here. And I'm not sure Al Franken, based on his comments today, is truly with the program.
Now, Capri, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, look, I mean, I think the entire thing is gross, frankly. I mean, I do think that...
Well, what does that mean? Everything's gross.
Everything is
gross.
gross.
The culture is gross today.
The culture is gross. Yeah. I think this entire thing is indicative of the swamp. It is the swampiest of swamp thing. So, number one, I think that Al Franken is not necessarily on board, but I do think that he did this to take one for the proverbial
team. But he says he's going to stay... He's going to keep his voice. What does that mean? He's going to keep
That's
his
a really
voice?
good question. And here's why. Because obviously he resigned because the Democrats wanted to make sure that they were, quote unquote, like
clean.
Yeah.
Now it's like
they're getting the high ground, right? They're getting the political high ground. They're getting the political high ground here in light of the theoretical victory of Roy Moore next week, right? So what happens, number one, if Roy Moore loses, that'll be very interesting.
He's not going to lose.
I don't think he's going to lose. Yeah. But, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, poor Al Franken is trying to salvage his reputation. But what makes me angry is that if people were not called out, Democrats or Republicans.
Roy Moore said he didn't do any of this. Roy Moore is denying this.
But Al Franken denied it all, too.
Right, so he shouldn't have quit. Roy Moore's fighting. Roy Moore's fighting, and I didn't even endorse him, but Roy Moore's fighting.
Here's the bottom line.
Quitting.
But from a Democrat,
he won't stand up to
from
those
a Democrat perspective, from a Democrat perspective, Democrats and myself included say, look, you know, if you believe women, if you believe victims.
Can a woman ever tell a tale that is false about a man? Does that ever happen? Because to watch what people are saying about this, all women are saints. All women are saints and all men are sinners.
We need to be careful, and we do need due process. But
there's no due process.
There is there's no due process on either side. It needs to be equitable. The bottom line is it needs to be equitable.
This is what I say.
And Republicans alike.
This is what I say, Harmeet. A mere allegation. Now, Harold Ford Jr., who I know a little bit, is now several years ago. I guess you can't ask someone for a date more than a couple of times. Well, and now that's a violation. You can't. And the Trent Franks thing, I don't know what to think about. But I don't even see how that would be harassment unless it were a condition of employment or part of an overall hostile work environment, which it's not.
And most of the Al Franken incidents are that way as well.
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference between John Conyers, who allegedly harassed a number of his subordinates, but Al Franken doing the, you know, grabbing of the butt cheeks in public venues. There's no actually legally. I mean, you take that case to a DA, they're not going to prosecute that.
I mean, George H.W. Bush apparently is getting Randy in a wheelchair.
All the time.
Let's leave that poor man alone.
I'm just saying, if you're going to be equitable, you just said be equitable. You want to be equitable? Let's be equitable.
For every offense.
But I'm saying this is going to backfire on women. I know I've had conversations with so many men over the last couple of weeks. Everyone's afraid. Everyone's afraid they're afraid to hire women. They're afraid to travel with women. They're afraid to be alone in offices with women, because if it ends up being their word against a woman's word, in this